Thank you for making the time and doing it so quickly. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thanks for reaching out. I'm super interested in doing stuff like this. Still a little early. I've only done like a few shows now, but been super eager to get more into it. So appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, of course. I don't know how we really got connected. May have been someone just adding Tunnel into the channel, or I genuinely don't even remember at this point. I think all the days are just becoming a blur. But regardless, I'm super excited, and I think there's so much that we can cover here that are interesting topics. Maybe not even related to just like startup world and venture capital and stuff like that, but even more particular about the technology and your experience. I think is so fascinating. And I really want to focus in on your story. It's definitely unique, but I think it's going to be relatable to a lot of people that may come across this. So, when we spoke yesterday, you talked about your journey, and I would love for you to share it again, if you don't mind, of
Yeah.
starting to your college days of exploring robotics.
Yeah. So in college, I actually was running like a little e-commerce startup, kind of like paid my way through school that way. But I was always studying robotics, super passionate about that, like that interplay between like physical and digital. So that was like kind of my core focus and study area in school. And when I graduated, even though like the e-commerce business was going well, I knew I wanted to pursue like a career in tech and robotics. So I actually ended up selling that business and got hired at a small robotics company in Minneapolis. That it was a super awesome experience getting to work with industrial robotics and computer vision stuff, especially at a small company. There's just so much hands on, but didn't last long. That was 2021. I think Web3 was just huge at the time, popping off, especially like COVID times, all that. So like it did make robotics a little tough. And so I just like got really into it and started exploring it. I think right away I recognized that smart contract escrow was really powerful because like in e-commerce, I wanted to work with influencers for like influencer marketing. And the deal is like you got to pay up front. So like they don't even give you the time of day. It's like, hey, I'm going to charge $500 per post and like the cash better be there before I'm going to do anything. And like that wasn't going to work for me. I mean, super small business at the time. So when I learned about smart contracts, I kind of tied that back to my e-commerce days. I was like, wow, this could be really perfect. Sort of took for granted, like, oh, you could just like trigger it by I'll pay X amount per view or whatever. Until you realize smart contracts and blockchain can't actually connect to like arbitrary, like any data on the internet, right? Like they have no idea how many likes you have on Twitter. So that's when I learned about Chainlink, right? Bridging the on-chain and off-chain worlds, like getting that data on chain into a smart contract to do something. But I think that's like kind of essentially how I initially got into the space. Like learned about Chainlink, got super excited, and started doing hackathons.
Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. I don't want to put you on the spot. You seem to be a humble individual, but I think it'd be some of the things to touch on. One, you go to school for engineering, specifically in robotics. It's already difficult, and my smooth brain can't process that. And then I'm like, all right, you see the opportunity in e-commerce, being entrepreneurial, being driven in that sense, and say, okay, well, how is this applicable to me and what I want to innovate so that this could be a more seamless process? Then COVID happens. It's pretty difficult, as you mentioned the other day, like working with robotics and working with things that are physical. It's very difficult to do in an environment where we are 6 feet apart, where we are trapped inside of our dorm rooms, maybe even going back home because the school's shut down. And that's when I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you're like, wow, Web3 seems to be a very powerful tool. It's starting to catch a lot of notice beyond just Bitcoin and Ethereum at this point. Let's explore more. You start seeing how smart contracts are being utilized on the day to day. And then at that point, if I'm not mistaken, you get introduced to Chainlink. Somehow you find what Sergey's building and you're like, I want to pursue that. And so like I don't want you to just skim over the hackathon because I think that
Yeah.
even that is like, oh my gosh, the fact that you enter the hackathon, win the hackathon, find your way working with Chainlink in a very unique capacity. I really want you to be able to discuss that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I can kind of get in it. So definitely got that accurate up until like sort of fast forward through those college times and COVID. It feels like all a blur. But honestly, I just like I wasn't even working in robotics that long. It was like a 9 month stint at this little startup. So and even like the second half of that, I was already into Web3. So like was super focused on that. But I think that kind of covers like sort of my entry into the space. But the way I got exposed to Chainlink was really like I had that problem. And so I think I was listening to podcasts and stuff and just came across Sergey. There's a Lex Friedman podcast that he did that was just incredible. If you
Listen
haven't
to the
seen it
same
yet
one.
and you're in Web3, that is the podcast that got me into Web3. I know a lot of people, it's like Vitalik. For me, it's always been Sergey.
Same. Truly.
Yeah.
And not just to pander and say that, but Sergey and his interview with Lex, that's where I was like, okay, this is beyond just like some currency that's being used on blockchain. This is way deeper than that. But not to cut you off, please continue.
Yeah, and I'm not a finance guy. Like, I'm an engineer, I'm a builder. I appreciate how important finance is. Like, I get DeFi, but it's just not personally what fires my engine. And so when I learned about blockchain, I immediately didn't think about trading or financial stuff. I thought, like, what are problems in the real world that this technology can solve that Web2 just can't? And that was, like, for me, influencer marketing, just because I already kind of had that little e-commerce background. But that's always been my focus. And so I think that kind of leads into like the hackathon. So I learned about Chainlink, but when you know about it at the beginning, they only had set data sources. So I couldn't just fetch like how many likes this tweet has or anything. You have price feeds typically. So like stock prices are typically crypto token prices. They'll write that on the blockchain for DeFi contracts, but nothing that lets me do, escrow and then release funds based on some real world event. And I wanted that. I needed that. And so I joined the Chainlink hackathon fall of 2021 and built this this proof of concept really where you could run arbitrary JavaScript on a decentralized Oracle network. Now, like what that really means is instead of having this preset data that the Chainlink oracles are pushing onto the blockchain, any developer could write their own code in JavaScript, include that in an on-chain request, and then the nodes are going to pick up that request, execute that code in a secure environment, reach consensus on that response, and return it to your smart contract. So that's essentially like what I did. I mean, I kind of hacked it together. I didn't even really have much prior experience. So it was my first time working with JavaScript. I mean, I had like Python experience from computer vision stuff, but that's really it.
So
And
for
yeah,
me, sorry to interrupt.
go
'Cause I
for
think
it.
you're on a roll right now, but for me to comprehend this in full transparency, do not tend to put myself in a category of saying I fully get the inner workings, especially from a dev side of things, but just getting the high level, the 10,000 foot. So
Yeah.
to try and put this in layman's, what you were able to do is take data that wasn't already on chain for Chainlink. So, for example, you were saying pre-existing like cryptocurrency pricing, like more DeFi
hmm
related things, were able to already be on chain. But what you were doing was creating smart contracts, feeding that to the Oracle nodes, and then they would, because you were creating those, now there was another level of data that was able to be implemented on chain. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. So to kind of like I guess simplify it really, it's being able to take any data on the internet and access that with your smart contract. So instead of these preset things where like, some client came to Chainlink and said, we need this price data, and they set up a whole Oracle network and put that on the chain. Instead, it was, hey, developer, you write your own code to fetch whatever data you want on the internet. You just deploy that like in your smart contract. You just like put the code in there, and then you send requests, and those requests fetch whatever data you need. And now you can do whatever you need to do in your smart contract.
And then I think this would be so because you were able to develop this and provide even more data for developers to play with on chain, you were able to see, from your experience of working with e-commerce, working with content creators, is that really the precipice and just the beginning stages of where Tunnl is today and how it became what it is
Yeah.
now?
Because I actually like I had this concept of wanting to do social media influencer marketing agreements with this escrow on the blockchain. So that was actually the start. So I actually built the proof of concept of arbitrary compute just so that I could build that one specific use case I wanted of getting social media data. But because I didn't know like what platform, like I didn't know if it was going to be YouTube or Instagram or whatever. And you can't just build these very specific data streams for all the different things. Instead, you want to build a generalized tool that now you can use down the road to build whatever specific use case you want later on. So that's sort of what spurred it, and built that project out, like built some sort of proof of concepts like, hey, this is the kind of data you can put on chain. And that was my hackathon, like proof of concept project. And actually, I think it was like a second or third place. I won a prize in that hackathon and was able to use that to get in touch with the team and eventually get an interview and get hired at Chainlink Labs.
I mean, that is awesome in so many different ways. I think the one thing that I think highlights the journey that you've had so far is just putting yourself, I don't know if you at that moment of time were like, I'm going to be entrepreneurial, I'm going to start my own company. I don't know if that's what the vision was for you at that moment, but I think it's so cool to be able to reflect and then say, all right, like I just did that. Now my foot's in the door of being able to learn and get more experience that can enhance me at a later date to be an even better entrepreneur, founder, developer, whatever you want to call it. But I want to highlight the fact that the way things operate now for individuals that are either trying to just find a career in Web3 or just trying to find a career in general, I'm kind of taking us into a different route here, but I think it's so fascinating that it's no longer the traditional, I have a resume, hire me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I
no
think
kidding.
it's so cool to be like, in order for me to get my goal accomplished, I need to take steps that are unconventional. For
Yes.
example, how do I prove myself? Okay, it's not like I just graduated from uni and here's my resume, give me a shot. The standard now today is I need to have something tangible for someone to see that I am someone that's validated, right? It's
Yes.
no longer just here's my resume, take a bet on me. It's like no, you have to be of value for us to hire you. And I think
Yeah.
and I think this can also segue into what's going on with Tunnl right now is, I'm reading all of these articles that are talking about the advancement of AI, the advancement of how companies are way more lean. And, Sam Altman the other day is like, the first company that is going to have a $1 billion valuation with one person is coming. Right. So there's no longer this like need for 100+ person company anymore. And it's people like you that are proving that to be the case. And I mean that in such a positive way. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that is not just like kind of sideswept. Like that is so impressive for you to be able to take what you have, your understanding. And then also, if I'm not mistaken from our conversation yesterday, like a lot of it was self-taught, no?
Yeah, I didn't have any prior experience in Web3 at all. Shout out to Patrick Collins. I mean, his tutorials were great, like the OG in the space. That's how I learned how to do all this stuff with Chainlink to begin with. But to your point about showing what you know, especially in this industry, like no one cares about your resume. Like don't even bother. Do like hackathons or first you need a portfolio. You need to be able to network. Starts out with like just like a good LinkedIn profile. Start there. Post about what you learn. Like when you're doing self-education, don't do it in isolation. You should be actually like even every single day, post a little recap of what you learned that day. So if I had to give advice to people that are earlier in their career, you got to take a step back before you can sort of launch into this like, oh, 6-figure career, all this stuff. Like it's not going to happen like that. It just won't. Like it's going to take years to get there, but you will get there. And the start is just self-education and networking and communicating with people. And even if you only have like a really small community of like a few people, that's going to grow. And I think some people think, oh, well, I'm not an influencer. I'm not going to get thousands of people. You don't need that. Like you need a few dozen, less than that, half dozen of like the right people that you're connected with that are going to branch out and give you the opportunities. And the way that you form those is just by moving in the space, being a positive actor, and then sharing your experience. So the best way to do that, I'd say, is like hackathons because they sort of force you to learn, and they are not easy. Make no mistake, like there's no easy way to get into this. I think that's a message that people need to have. You are going to have to work really hard for a really long time without recognition and without any hope that it's going to go anywhere. But if you do that consistently, eventually you're going to find some opportunities that land you in a good spot.
Absolutely. I completely agree with the sentiment. And I think that goes even beyond just the engineers in the space. I mean, how competitive is that environment? If you even internally at QuickNode, I mean, those jobs, when they pop, they're filled. And I think that is across the board with any one of these companies is because, yeah, there's so many more people learning how to code. And then to your credit, it's very easy to access the knowledge and skill set because it's all online and it's self-taught for a lot of these people. So I think for the people that are willing to pick up, those skill sets and bootstrap and be willing to put their nose to the grindstone and say, hey, I did get that great education at a top school, but now the playing field's level. And what did I get out of that experience in school? And hopefully you're relying more so on the intangibles. I think you made mention of it. It's like, how are you networking? I think that's a huge component of it as well, where a lot of people are maybe, I don't want to be negative here, but there's a lot of self entitlement. And again, making
Yeah.
highlight of this because you have to take the humble pill, especially in Web3. You got to start at the beginning for the people that are later in their career, right? Or 5 to 8 years into their career that are afraid of a pivot, are interested but aren't willing to learn and get, in the trenches of things. It's very difficult to find yourself in any type of role in the space. So kudos to you on just taking the time to learn, adjust, and go for it, because a lot of people aren't. And I think that's a common theme with a lot of founders that you speak to is just, I took the time to learn. There were things that I didn't, but I had to learn. And then I put myself out there. Being afraid of failure, you're never going to make it. And so anyway, that's my little soapbox speech. But talking about the hackathon, you made mention that it's not easy. It's a bit of a grind. Could you talk through some of the success that you had in it, but also maybe some of the setbacks or lessons that you learned going to
Yeah.
these hackathons?
Yeah. So I did mostly virtual hackathons, which are typically a month long. And I definitely slacked at my job during that last month. I would say don't necessarily do exactly that. Like make sure that you're fulfilling your obligations. But I went in hard and I was working like more than a full-time like week just on that hackathon project. I mean, it was super late nights. It was the entire weekend. That last week, like I literally took like a week off of work so I could focus on that 100%. But like that's the kind of level of dedication it takes to win. So I think I see a lot of people and like hackathons are fun. You don't have to do it because you have this focus on winning. But if you are somebody that wants to win, like it's there for you because there's not a lot of people that are willing to grind out like an 80-hour week that last week to get a project submitted. But if you do that, like, you have to have like a good idea and all this stuff. And that might take a few different hackathons to get to the point that you're able to do that. But if you go hard, like people are going to notice. And so that hard work gets recognized.
Fair enough. And I think one of the things that stands out if you're talking about 80-hour work weeks like that, how do you personally, I think you said to me one of the things that stood out just in these side conversations is you're like, it's actually raining out here right now, so this may work out well because it's going to clear out and then I'm just going to be able to run.
Okay, I have a little bit of a confession too. So before this call, the reason why we're a little bit late, I was doing stair sprints before this because I knew I'm feeling a little low energy. I want to bring it on this pod. So I'm like, well, why do you do that? 10 minutes of sprints, right? Like, dude, I can't have caffeine in the middle of the day because I'm gonna be up at night, screws up my sleep schedule. Then tomorrow's wrecked. So I think like I don't want to just be someone that just repeats Huberman talking points because I don't go that hard at it. Like. But there's something to it. And I think like a healthy dose of like, look, I certainly don't do everything. I took supplements and all this stuff. I don't now. Like, I mean,
Are you a morning
multivitamin,
sunlight guy?
whatever.
Do you get immediate sunlight in the
I
eyes when you
was
wake up?
super good at it for a while, honestly. So I live in Wisconsin though. It gets really cold. So the last thing I want to do is wake up and like go outside. I know what you're supposed to do, cold showers and like get cold in the morning. I don't do all that, but I think there's a few key things. And I think it's consistent exercise, sleep, and diet. I think if you can get those dialed, like you're going to be ahead of most people. And then a lot of that other stuff's candy. I mean, sunlight is big for the sleep too. So I think in moderation, people spend too much time maxing out on these sort of like biohacking things, and that's not the right approach. But yeah, I mean, if you want to play with the A players, you need to work out consistently.
It's so funny. It's so funny that you say this because if you think about the computer engineer, tech-minded individual for like the web2.com, Gen X people, boomers, they will think of that as, the fat dude living in grandmom's basement with a bag of Cheetos, just playing World of Warcraft, but also like cracked out coding. That's like the typical. But one thing that I've found so fascinating about Web3 is just the health and fitness and mental health. Like all of those aspects are prioritized very heavily, and that has been such a culture shock for me in a good way. Like being a former athlete, I totally want to prioritize that and keep that as a priority in my life. And when it's not, my personal life goes to hell in a handbasket. So I think it's so cool to hear for you. It's like, 80-hour work week. I just was nonstop on this one project, but
And to be clear, I think like something too that gets missed. You're like, well, how does this guy do like an 80-hour work week and he's working out? Well, guess what? That 80-hour work week, I didn't work out. Like my butt was sitting in a desk chair the entire time. But the reason that I was able to do that and like my life didn't completely fall to shambles is because I like prep for it. So like I'll actually do like when I'm planning to do a hackathon or a conference and I know like I'm going to be slammed. There's going to be no working out. Like maybe I'll walk. That's it. I am making sure like, okay, well, I'm going to work out really hard. I'm kind of bank it to some degree so that that week, maybe it's just like a recovery week, which I probably needed anyway, since I've been going hard. Looking at your life in like in cycles and seasons, like I've heard the term seasons, whatever you want to say, but you know that one week's going to crush. And sometimes you just have to say, yep, that's going to crush. And I'm going to have to completely throw off my schedule and everything. That means I just got to be extra good before. And then afterwards, like it's going to take me a while to get back to getting that routine. So it does wreck you. Like those last week of a hackathon or like those big, I mean, this is launch week for us, which another big push. And you just have to do that and prepare for like pre-prepare and then deal with the fallout afterwards. But the thing is, if you can sometimes sprint for that 1 week when it really matters, now you've got the trophy and you can take that week to sort of recover.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that my one takeaway from what you're sharing is just you got to have a game plan. It may not be perfect, but if you are regimented and disciplined and just follow the path that you've already set for yourself, there's got to be a positive that comes out of it, whether it's the goal that you had in mind or just the takeaways that come with it. I really do appreciate and respect that vision. But yeah, we could Huberman this and we could go all night about just, biohacking and Brian Johnsoning it. But I do want, if you're cool with it, I would love to learn more about Tunnl and the technology behind it. I do not mean to put you in like an elevator pitch situation at all, but one of the things that I think is really fascinating, just from the skimming and getting to know a little bit about it, sidebar, definitely want to try this out for myself, but looking at the faucet feature that you guys launched and just learning a little bit more about it for the micro creators, the brands that are out there, people that are interested in pursuing a way to be paid on chain, would love to hear about like the 10,000 foot, and we can get as granular as you want.
Yeah, would love to get into it. I'm actually even like pulling up our pitch deck here on my side just so I can make sure I get the good bullet points here. We have iterated a lot on like how to communicate it clearly. So what Tunnl is it is a way for brands to run marketing campaigns with creators. Basically, it kind of like has evolved because we started out with this idea that there needs to be a way that creators can guarantee they're going to get paid without a brand needing to pay up front. So like this idea of escrow. And so Tunnl, at the end of the day, is a service that escrows funds and releases them to creators when they fulfill their obligations. And that core kernel of smart contract escrow has been sort of adapted into this new product of faucets, which allows you to do this at scale. So previously it was one-to-one agreements. Like I am a brand, I'm going to draft up all the content requirements I want, send that to a particular creator. They make the post. We actually are able to verify that post using AI. So just look at the brand requirements, look at the post. Does it meet it? Okay, release the funds. That direct offer model is great. It works, but it's a lot of work to actually facilitate coordinating between these brands and creators. You learn pretty quick that the main problem in influencer marketing, creator marketing, whatever you want to call it, is making these connections to begin with. And while the secure fund transfer is a problem, it's really only a small part of it. And that is what we have spent the last year sort of evolving on and building out. So that kind of leads to this new product of faucets, where faucets is where a brand can set a reward pool and specify like content requirements. And then creators can come and claim a deal at a fair price based on their real profile metrics, make the post, and then funds are automatically released 48 hours later once that content's verified on chain.
So from a content creator standpoint, what's the onboarding process look like? Is there a bidding war? Are there prerequisites that the brands will have in order for you to qualify for a pool, like to be a part of that pool share? What does it look like from the content creator side?
Yeah, so a creator just signs on. Currently, we only support X, plans to support other platforms in the future. But a creator's going to come on, they're going to sign in with their X account. On the backside, we are instantly calculating their profile metrics. So they can go to a campaigns page where they can see all these faucet campaigns listed, click on one, and it's going to show a little payout price based on, it varies depending on the campaign, like what is the reward pool, and there's some parameters the brand can tune. But essentially they'll see like, okay, I'm going to get paid $10 for this tweet or $100 for this tweet, depending, and they can claim that deal now. So in terms of what they're eligible to access, that is up to the brands. Like all the campaigns right now, it's just, hey, anyone on Tunnl can claim a particular deal, but brands do have the ability to say, I only want creators from this niche, or set a specific whitelist of, I only want these 100 creators who are aligned with my brand to be able to claim deals. So brands have some power there, but we're really focused on just the Web3 niche. So to start, just saying, hey, these are all vetted Web3 creators and we only have Web3 brands, it's sort of as a natural match there. Some Web3 brands want to niche down, DeFi, NFTs, whatever. But that is why right now we're really able to facilitate this agreement. And we're still pretty small. I mean, we're just under 1,000 users still, and that's able to manage it pretty well. Now we're actually seeing already the growth here, like, oh, maybe like AI, not just blockchain, but just like specifically AI content creators or devfluencers. I like that term, like developers who have a following. Maybe some dev tooling brand just wants to focus on those creators. We can support that.
Got it. So in terms of brands right now, are those also just web?
Yeah. So at the moment, we just focus on Web3 brands. I mean, our like outreach process is just DMs. I mean, we haven't like raised any funding or anything like that. So for us, it's just, hey, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Send a lot of messages, get users in one-on-one. And so that's why we've been able to focus on brands that are already kind of aligned. They already are running creator campaigns and just want a way to scale it.
Got it. And so I would assume, knock on wood, everything's going well. And you all,
hey, 24 hours in so far, 27, I think, 28, something like that. So still early, but yeah, so far so good. We've been in private beta for 8 months and just launched publicly yesterday.
And by the way, I have to say thank you so much for doing this during launch week. I don't know what the reach is yet with my channel or my following on Farcaster, but it is very humbling to be able to do this with you during launch week. So making the time for this, I genuinely I'm super thankful, and it's really exciting. But yeah, looking at the brands, so are we talking about, just so I can wrap my head around this, the brands that you're dealing with, are we talking about the exchanges that are on chain, the protocols that are on chain that have a token, and that's how they're paying out these content creators? Or what do the brands look like right now, and where do you see them evolving to?
Yeah, 100%. So I can just talk through some of the brands we have now. So it's typically Web3 projects, startups, a lot. Like right now, for example, we've got this project Arcadia. They are on-chain gaming. So they're building for the gaming space. Liquidity manager too. Actually going through some of these.
And if this is anything that is I didn't.
Yeah, because
just for high level, what these brands look like and who you would like them. And we could shout them out all day if you'd like, but just more so of the general brand that you have today and what that may look like years to come.
Yes. So right now we're focused on Web3 startups. So a lot of it started out with projects that are built on Base. I know there is a cross-chain bridging, Conchero. They're a really great partner. GasHawk is another partner we've worked with as well. So GasHawk, they're a little bit, I know I shouldn't be biased with my customers, but whatever. This tool, GasHawk, it replaces your RPC URL in your wallet. And what it does is it finds way lower gas prices for you by just delaying your transaction. So you can input it and then say, I don't care if this 24-hour window, it's not urgent, whatever. And it'll hunt for the lowest gas price on chain and send your transaction right then. So that's an example of a startup that has a really cool product in the Web3 space. It's not like a token. We do have some projects that are around a token, but this one, it's just a really cut and dry use case and an awesome product. So I've been super passionate about that.
I love that you just shouted out GasHawk. That's a great, I love them. And it's so perfect for the exchanges that are doing institutional size deals and blocks that, some of these gas fees that exchanges and wallets that they have to do are so expensive and unnecessarily. And for GasHawk to find the way to innovate that, yeah, I think it's really slick. So yeah, I could say this too, there's no bias in that. They are objectively just a great tool on chain.
Exactly. And so I'm really excited, as a builder, I'm excited about that. And so really though, we know that this product is applicable to so many things. We were actually looking today at clipping, for example, is this new big thing where basically podcasts and stuff will pay to have their content clipped and re-uploaded. And it's well, man, we can do a very similar use case there too. So I think it goes to show how generally applicable a tool like this can be not only to Web3 brands. We've just chosen to start there because that's where our existing network is. Like we already know Web3 brands because we work with them every day. So that's our initial GTM plan. And then from there, we can expand out and see who else wants to work with us. I think that the big unlock has been infrastructure stuff like Privy, where no longer do I have to come on and like the first screen I see is like connect a wallet. It's like, what? Like, I don't have a wallet. Just let me use your app. And even for me, who's like a Web3 native, like, I don't, maybe it's not in this browser profile. So it's just a huge pain. So I think the
Absolutely.
next thing is,
I think we talked about that yesterday a little bit. Not
yeah,
gonna name
yeah.
names. We're definitely we're on the same page for sure. And things like Privy, and this is the thing. This is more of like a perspective that I have, and I'm glad you're touching on this. The way we see it today, I mean, think about the leaps that have occurred when you first really started diving in around 2021, 2020, from where we are today, 4 or 5 years later. I mean, the seamlessness, the innovation, the user experience has just changed drastically. And I think, yeah, it sounds like you would agree, yeah?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And especially like being a naive dev where I'm like, why don't you just use a CLI tool and just like interact with your contracts that way? I mean, just personally, how much I've come by just listening to users and actually watching someone use an app. But it makes you realize like I've been known to crash out of my Twitter every now and then by having a bad wallet experience. And I'm like, if I as a developer can't figure out what the hell this error message means, what hope does like a normal user have of figuring this out? So
Completely.
constant theme for me. And the solution is just building better UIs and integrated wallets. Like I think at this point, I've kind of given up on browser wallets being the path forward because now there's just so many competing standards. And as a developer, like what do I even build for? Like, do I have to test 8 different wallets to make sure my app works with all of them? Because that sucks. So I think the solution really is embedded wallets.
Interesting. So one of the things that I'm debating in conversation with is just what is the bubble that we're facing with right now in Web3? What's the massive correction going to be in relation to infra? You know, you're talking about embedded wallets as being one of the things that we're going to have to address. One of the things that I think is really interesting, and just an observation, is the amount of general purpose blockchains that are out there. And do we really have a need? And me personally, look, I'm not the dev. I don't know what the inner workings are and what's going on under the hood as much as someone like you. But from just a 10,000-foot overview, looking at the industry as it stands today, I've seen, and this kind of drove to why I wanted to start this channel and podcast, is I see a lot of these blockchains going into development, and they're just a different iteration of a competitor that, okay, so we're going to be doing 10,000 transactions per second. And it's like, okay, great. We're going to do 10,001 transactions per second. And that seems to be the evolution within that. And I'm like, this isn't solving any problems to get end users to adopt, use cases. Right. And so that's another thing. The theory that I have is we're going to, and, not for anyone to get squeamish, but I think we're approaching this massive correction within Web3 that I think is going to be healthy. And I do think that there are going to be blockchains that don't survive. And I would love to pick your brain on this. But one of the theories I have is we are not seeing blockchains take on, a specific sector or industry or specific like target market. I think there's a few that have, for example, like Base. Base has kind of naturally finding themselves to be like a culture blockchain, where
Yes.
creators are going to want to build there in a professional, like there's a little bit of professionalism, there's a little bit of an edge, but there's still like a culture that's affiliated with Base that I think that Web3 natives are starting to become privy to. And then you have Solana. Like Solana is still very much a culture. They're trying to identify themselves as like a culture blockchain. And then you have blockchains like Sui being like a gaming infra, like they're trying to identify themselves, but like there you have that. Then you have, Ripple for, they want to go institutional. That's fine. Then you have Plume, like they want to be a RWA centered chain. I think that is the approach that we should see, for us to advance. I don't know, like I would love to hear your thoughts on that as a developer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that chains need to compete for devs. And I think a lot of them pretend like they support devs. A lot of them like to blow a lot of smoke. And what I see firsthand is that developers are often taken for granted. So we've got this big ecosystem of people that eagerly want to build. And if they try to like seek funding, I mean, it's a brutal landscape. It is hard to find funding. And sometimes I have a hard time blaming investors because I understand the venture capital outcomes are looking for 100x. But man, I wish there was just a way for builders that are like, hey, I'm not building a project that's got like a 100 or 1000x, but I'm building a business that actually can be sustainable and can return like on the investment. And maybe it can't return an entire fund, but I really want to see more focus on that because the thing is, you've got this huge investment into the blockchain itself. Great. Maybe that does have this 100x potential if it becomes the chain. But if you don't have all the apps built on that chain, that 100x investment you're hoping to get back isn't going to happen. So you have to take the bet on all of these smaller consumer apps that like, and again, I don't know, like, again, I'm not a finance guy. I don't know what the capital structure has to look like to enable this, but I just wish small teams of incredibly dedicated builders could get the funding they need, especially people that can prove themselves at a hackathon. You don't even have to take a total gamble on someone you've never met. You can see like this person has won 3 hackathons. They clearly are demonstrating this is good, and maybe even supporting them with like, because I think sometimes devs struggle with ideas a little bit. But if you're like, I know you can build, here's a business that I know like has a need. Let's match these two up, build a team, give them a little bit of funding, and send them off to the races. And that's what I'm really hoping the industry evolves more towards.
Morgan, you just hit on so many talking points that make me happy because, again, this is the solution. This is the solution I'm trying to provide for, right? Genuinely. And I think we're seeing the dynamic as I observe it. In a previous life, I did work in traditional finance, did work in VC. And similar to you, like with your pivot from robotics to just diving into Web3, I saw a similar trend where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something that's unavoidable and something that I want to be a part of, whatever it takes to get in, And when I wanted to bring my understanding and skill set from a previous life to Web3 and all of the talking points that you just had in regards to VC, I hope they're paying attention. But whether they hear it here or from somewhere else, we have to, I get the pressure from VCs that need that 100x and that one company, that one portfolio company that's going to return the whole fund. The reality is, if you want an industry like Web3 to grow, you have to stop thinking with dollars because we're not at that stage yet. This is not Silicon Valley in 2015. This is a completely, it's the Wild West here. And in order for us to find success, we can't just keep throwing money at infra, keep gatekeeping with these blockchains and these foundation labs and say, hey, like go poach devs and build on chain because it's siloing individuals from creating. And it's making them have to take a risk on an infrastructure that they don't know is going to be there in five years. I mean, that's being generous, even saying 5 years. Yeah. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is, okay, great. There was a need for infrastructure investment, investing in these blockchains, enticing developers to go build on that chain. There was a point in time where that was necessary. And I think we're coming at an inflection point where we need to transition off of laying down the groundwork and the foundation and start going directly to these developers and saying, hey, we like your creativity. We like the concept and how you're going to innovate, not just the Web3 space, but as ambitious and as like fluffy as it sounds, the entire world. And I think we need to find VCs, angels, family offices, whoever that recognize that we can't keep looking like, yes, there was a ton of ROI in going into the infrastructure, but now we got to go and take bets on devs that are doing really good work. Because again, going back to it, I don't think the blockchain, ecosystem as it stands today, it's going to sustain. There's too much money going and being widespread among things that are not going to endure correction. And what we do need to start focusing on are people like yourself, founders that are building things. Because again, another bet that I'm willing to take and stand on is that blockchains, I mean, yeah, like you look at things like chain abstraction. Did we talk about that yesterday? Of just like,
I think we touched on it really briefly.
Yeah, there's all of these ways to innovate where, sure, whatever L1 you build on, yeah, that's important. But there's going to be ways to have one app whatever protocol that you've built interact with all of the different blockchains with bridges or certain tools where it's really going to be obsolete on what chain you built on. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, and I think even more so, it's hiding the fact of like what chain it's on entirely. Because I think there's something to be said about building an app that's fully cross-chain and manages that well. And there are apps that are going to be like that for sure, especially in DeFi, I think. But if you're building a consumer app, instead of thinking how I'm going to support all these blockchains, like pick one, but make your app so that it doesn't matter. Like you could swap out for like another blockchain on the back end and your users wouldn't even care. Like you could make it happen seamlessly. I think that's what we're moving towards, and chains are going to become commodities. It's already, I think, a race to the bottom. So now builders, I think, do have a lot more power. But also, I want to speak to builders. I think on one hand, it is true that investors do need to focus more on builders. Yes. At the same time, though, builders, that's not an excuse to like say, oh man, like, woe is me. I can't make this happen. Like, it's your responsibility to build regardless. And even though it's hard and no one's giving you the time of day and it's super unfair, it is. But like, guess what? That doesn't matter. And you're not going to change that by whining about it on Twitter. The way that you change that is like, frankly, like you kind of have to like give them the finger and build it anyway and show investors what they missed out on because of what you created. And guess what? Like, I think that's just, they're going to look back and realize like, oh, we missed out. We could have been a part of that and made that person's like life easier and this building this is easier. But carry that with you, builders, and don't build for VC. Just build to build and like figure it out. And yes, eventually you might need funding for your idea. But I think the idea is get to the stage where you don't actually need funding. Like you could like, yeah, you're not like super wealthy or anything like that, but your rent is paid, you're fed, like you're covering your server costs. Get there. Because if you can get there and then lay out the vision of guess what? Like I did it without you already. Now I want to raise at a better valuation with a proven business model and then just make this thing skyrocket. Now you have a really compelling pitch for VCs and you hold all the cards. So builders, put yourself in that position. Don't beg for VC. Make them beg for you.
Very, very well said. It's the truth. And what you're seeing here, and going back on the subject of VCs, what's the holdup from their end? There's two sides of the coin that I think are going on here. You have a lot of traditional finance VCs that have no exposure to Web3. They don't understand the culture. They don't understand the economics. And because of that, they're out, right? Then you have some of those that are on that side of the coin that are like, hey, interested, don't really get it, still want to explore. Let's talk through this. And then when they realize we're still very early, right? There are so many companies and projects that are out there that are generating revenue, but not the type of revenue they're used to seeing from B2B SaaS companies, earlier stages. So they see it as a liquidity issue and they don't want to take on tokens as a part of the solution for that because they don't understand it. So in that case, they're out. And then you see on the other side of it, there are VCs that are Web3 friendly that don't care about the safe note. All they care about is the tokens. And in a lot of cases, because of that, and I'm not saying this is for all VCs, it depends on what their vesting periods look like that
Certainly.
they agreed to the terms on, but it can be very predatory. I mean, you see these tokens, and mind you, they probably didn't do a traditional or like a proper VC round of funding, but I see these companies that advocate for themselves as being AI agents or what have you. They do a token launch, and then their valuation is a 1.2 billion market cap, at least on Dex Screener, right? And you're like, oh, pretty impressive. And then the next day you look at it and they have a 50 million market cap. And you're like, well, what happened? Oh, well, we just needed to liquidate so we could use the capital for OpEx. And then you're just like, what kind of business model is that? If I'm an investor or if I'm someone that wanted to look into buying, I have no desire just looking at how ugly your chart is now. So I think there's this like catch 22 between, hey, if I'm a founder, I can't go here, I can't go there, where do I turn? And I think what you're saying is a huge solution for that, which is just build the damn thing, be self-sustaining, get it to a point where you can survive. And then at that point, I think you're going to see a lot of interest from both sides and you're going to be the one to have an advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere. I live in central Wisconsin. Rent is cheap, cost of living's low. And guess what? It doesn't really matter where I live. So like these days of you needing to just like your baseline to tread water in SF is like $100,000 because of all this stupid rent and just everything's expensive. move somewhere cheap. And the fact that everything's remote, like my two developers that I work with every day are in Nigeria. And it doesn't
That
matter.
is so
It's no
cool.
different than when I was working with my coworkers who were remote at Chainlink Labs, who were US based usually. Same thing, really. So, also another thing is it's just so like you can live anywhere you want. So, you don't need an expensive office. You can build at home. You don't need a large team because, gosh, AI, like I definitely have mixed feelings about AI being like replacing devs, but it definitely makes you more effective, especially as a founder. Like if you're a technical founder, why do you need a team? So that would be the thing for me is move someplace cheap, leverage your connections. Everything's digital anyway. That doesn't give you a reason to like not keep networking, but networking doesn't have to be getting beers in person. It can just be all LinkedIn and it's sweatier. Like it's not nearly as fun to connect on LinkedIn as it is to like go get drinks with a coworker.
And
But
transparently, Morgan, it may not be as effective. I think there is something to say about the human element and being
Mhm.
in person, but that's not an excuse to your point. And I think
Well,
one
it
thing that
scales differently. That's I think the thing. Like you make a way better connection in person, and the connection digitally is weaker, but you can do it 100 times more. And sometimes that actually is the breakthrough. And you actually can like circle back because the nice thing is if you network that way, and then you identify a few key people that are like that person I really want to connect with, you can actually now go look to conferences and leverage that high in person relationship. So I'm not saying it's an excuse to not do that, but it changes the strategy where instead of like meeting in person with a bunch of people to like figure out who I want to connect with, who I vibe with, the strategy instead is cast a broad net virtually. It's way more work. It's not as fun. But then I identify a few key people that I'm like, you're really cool, man. Like I'd love to hang out. And then when you are, going to conferences, now you can connect and form that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I think your approach to, man, I don't want this to be pandering or biased, but I really do think the approach that you've taken to get to the stage that you're in right now has been the right ones. There's been lessons. I'm not saying that it's been smooth sailing for you. I'm sure you've had plenty of setbacks and plenty of things that, didn't go your way. And may even haven't at this point, right? Who knows? We haven't even talked about what your experience is of speaking with VCs and how has that looked? Has it been similar to what we were describing earlier, where there's the two sides and you're going to one, they say no because of this, and then the other side just because you're not comfortable with that? Has that been a little bit of your journey so far?
Yeah, I think I've learned a lot in the process of when I think back to our original business model that we were trying to pitch to people. Like we did get some angel investors, some people I knew from Chainlink Labs and just others, and those have been really, really great. But when it came time for us to actually reach out to funds, I totally understand why they didn't invest in us that early because we had the wrong narrative. We had a business model that wouldn't scale. And I think sometimes the gut reaction of founders is like, oh, they just don't understand us. Take that feedback. It is important. Like investors do have good things to say, but you need to also analyze it through the lens of VCs want a X return. Like you're like, this is a solid business model. This can work. You might be right. So build that. But you're not going to get money unless that fund can see that 100X. And so I don't blame the funds for like, telling us, and here's why. And it's been hard. Like I've had to hear some pretty brutal feedback of like why we were going to have a hard time raising. And you have to take it on the chin. The next thing I think is iterating your narrative. So you can choose to focus on this broader vision and try to sell that to VCs, but you have to build something to back that up. Like you do need the actual traction there. But our process has been a really mutually beneficial one still. So even though I have some complaints about how the VC industry at large is structured, everyone that we've talked to, I've always been able to take away some important finding that has improved our business, improved our pitch, and that's been probably the best process. So raising takes a really long time and it's a process of iterating. It's not just about like, here's the deck. I'm going to keep sending this out to people until I find someone. It's like, here's the deck. I'm going to talk to like a handful of people, get that feedback, maybe totally redesign my whole business model and then totally redesign the whole page and then do that again. And then totally redesign it again and do it again. I don't even know how many decks we've had. It's a lot. And I think every time we pitch, there's a difference in the deck a little bit. And that's kind of the right way to do things.
And so, just to touch on this, the feedback, has there been any takeaway that you think could be applicable to anyone that is an aspiring founder, someone that's sitting on an MVP, just afraid to launch it or at least pitch it to a VC? What were
Yeah.
some of the takeaways that you got that could be more, not like so personal to Tunnl, but something that could, you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I'm trying to think like, because I think there's sort of two ways of like advice for other founders as a founder, and then advice for VCs or analysts at, like from a founder's perspective too. I think maybe starting with my advice for like people in VC position, which obviously I don't, not an investor, but I think the thing that I've appreciated most is the brutal honesty. It sucks to hear that they're not going to invest, but the worst thing you can do is tell me you're going to talk about it with your team and then I hear nothing. Tell me right away why you're not investing so I can iterate on the deck so that I can fix my business model. And founders grow a pair. When an investor tells you no and tells you why, it means they respect you and they've given you the honor of telling you why they're not doing it. And they have now given you an opportunity to grow where you wouldn't otherwise. So I would almost like kind of hunt for the no's, but then like really don't push back on a no ever. If they say no, you shouldn't be like, oh, but this and this. Like your question should be really respect that and then try to dig into like whys in a non-accusatory way. Because if you do that, if you come and you're just so humble about it, and then also I think too, because this ties in like Twitter helps with this too. So you have an investor, maybe like you've kind of, like commented on other tweets here and there, or like whatever it took to get that initial interview, follow up with them and like follow and see their messages and like try to say things that sort of align with the conversation that you had before in a really humble way, like understanding why they won't invest. I've actually had like, this is a strategy I've done where I've got a lot of investors that I think like me as a founder, but didn't like our business model. But the thing is, the business model can change, right? Or like maybe there's a different startup in the future. And now, because I went with a really humble approach and learned from them, those are people I would be very comfortable going back to again and saying, hey, we pivoted to this, or hey, here's another startup I've done that I know that I would be much more in a better position to get their funding.
Nailed it on the head. I think one of the best takeaways I ever had in my career was a mentor of mine, and he would always just say, you got to stay in the traffic, right? Like, no matter what, just stay in the traffic. If there is a specific industry that you love and you want to be a part of it, just force yourself to be there. So as a founder, if you really love being in Web3 and you want to be a founder in Web3, stay in the traffic. And I know that sounds so like, dude, what are you talking about? But what it means is like, you don't know if this one idea that you have that you're going to pitch is going to be the one that hits. And to your point, you stayed humble, you're keeping your network intact, you know who to reach out to in the case that it may not be the one and you come to terms with that perhaps, but that next one that you have, you can go right back to them with the same idea if you maintain a solid relationship. And again, another thing from that is just being coachable. We don't know everything and we think that our idea is going to be the best. It may not be, and then you look back a year or two from when you had it and you're like, oh, I see where I really went wrong there. And then you iterate that and spin off a new idea that could be the one. But if you, to your point, you got to take the nose on the chin and you just grit your teeth, shake their hand and say, thank you so much, because there is value in that no that could make you an even better founder, dev, whatever. And that's just life lessons in my opinion. But yeah, I think the approach that you have and what you all are trying to do is so impressive. At the stage that you're in, man, I think it's really admirable and I'm really excited. I'm bullish as can be on Tunnl.
Well, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of weird to sort of like espouse my opinions as though I'm like some professional who's been there, done that. 'Cause it's weird to be in the trenches too. And I think that probably comes to another big lesson is you will never feel like you're qualified, and you do have to get comfortable with that. And I think what holds people back sometimes from sharing their story and sharing content is they don't actually feel like they have any professional acumen over that. But I think you just have to start speaking on things to develop that reputation in the first place. Like I have said a lot of things, like whether it's on TikTok or whatever, that I'm like, man, I actually need to follow my own advice. So I'll like give advice that I'm actively not following, right? Which sounds like, oh, I'm a hypocrite. Like I'm giving advice that I'm not following. But guess what? Because I gave that advice, now it's in my head. And I'm like, you told other people that like you should do this or that. You should probably take your own advice. And man, I've learned a lot from that.
Put your money where your mouth is. And, if you're going to talk about it, you got to be about it. So if you're going to go out there and start, talking your shit on Instagram or TikTok, whatever social media platform,
It
Farcaster
does
and
have to be good advice, to be clear. Like, I don't mean to say like, oh, just lie about what it is. But I think the point is,
100%.
if you know something to be true, even if you're not practicing it yet, you can share that thing, but know that it's something that you still need to work on. And as long as you're not, like, if I would never say something I have no intention of following through on, but if you like have, like, for example, me, I was always saying, like, I'd only been doing it for a week. And then I made some post about how it's important to get up and get sun for Huberman. I mean, I felt like a poser at first because what the heck? Like, I'm only a week in and I'm already sharing this, but I actually got good reception. And guess what? It started that pattern. And so, like, I mean, I think I went over a year of not missing at all. Some life events did happen. I did get an injury, which toned down my ability to get up and get out in the morning. Regardless of that, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. But I think the point at the end of the day is don't be afraid to say things and create a persona and just try to live up to that ideal, even if you're not at that ideal today.
So, how important do you think? And I think you're touching on a lot of good points here. I have no rebuttal on anything you're saying, but I think one thing that's really fascinating is a lot of people do the copy pasta, right? Whether they're trying to, build an audience or not, I think they follow trends and they're afraid to stand for their own opinions, right? And one thing, and this is not just for people on Farcaster or X or wherever, but I think one thing that's super important, if you're trying to build anything, you have to be okay with taking a position on some things, It doesn't need to be everything, but it's okay to form an opinion and run with that.
Mm-hmm. I think too, finding that voice, it's like you actually don't even know all the opinions that you have right away, which is weird to say because you actually have to explore that. And I think especially on social media, you should give yourself the permission to explore that in public. I have been posting essentially into the void on Twitter for a year. Like I didn't have like barely anyone followed me. I just post day after day, posting. But thinking about it and like not shit posting, but like actually having some opinion that I wanted to share. And my opinions evolved over time. And I'd comment on other people's opinions. And honestly, a lot of my takes were bad. And I sort of had to like reflect back on that. Like, this is in contrast with maybe what I actually believe, or maybe I'm not communicating it right, or whatever it is. Put up bad takes because you're not going to learn to develop your personality and your voice until you have a whole lot of failures. I'm even reminding myself again because now I'm doing daily TikTok videos now. So follow me, Kuphdev on TikTok, KUPHDEV. Yeah, love shouting that out.
All your stuff at the whatever outlets I put it on. I'll definitely drop all of your links. Make sure to
Thanks, man. Because I'm only 30 days in. And it's not all the content is great. So put that up there right now. But I'm like, dude, is that even the point of this? Like, do I even care about the number of views? No. Like, I'm just trying to get good at this. And I think that's what I saw with Twitter, where I'm like, I don't care about my followers. I'm trying to get good at Twitter. And then the followers will come. And I think with TikTok, I'm just going to apply that same thing where I'm just going to post once a day for an entire year and see what happens, as opposed to like looking at it every day. And don't not look at your views because it's information, but the goal is not the views. The views are only an indicator of like, oh, people that resonated or this didn't.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think, look, at the end of the day, we're just floating on a rock in the middle of the universe. I'm not a subject matter expert. I can only speak on experience and just the opinions that pop up in my head. Not here to claim that I know everything. I could halfway, maybe 57% of the things that I said today were just absolutely false. I don't know, but I think it's okay to like at least take a stab at it, put it out there and see the receptiveness of it, So, and I think anyway, yeah, that's the objective, is just making sure that people are getting exposure and, introducing other ideas and tools that could be beneficial. I mean, who knows? Who knows who's going to be able to see this and say, hey, Tunnl is exactly what I need. I have a lot of cool content. There's a lot of people that I get to reach out to that seem to like what I'm saying, but I'm not getting paid for it. I don't know how to continue. You're the perfect solution for that.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, definitely hit us up for that.
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, we are just about at time.
All right.
I've got to I got to get ready. I'm heading up to FarCon tomorrow. Nice.
Oh, my co-founder is going to be there. He decided to pull through. I should get you in touch with him.
Put us in touch. Absolutely. I'll let him know that we were able to speak. Morgan, it's been an absolute pleasure. If you want to take the time to just shout out and do your plugs for anything,
Oh
feel free
yeah.
to do that right now.
Yeah, so KufDev, pretty much everywhere. KUPHDEV does differ from my Farcaster username, so that's KUPHJR, Kuf Jr. But I think the main thing is follow Tunnl. That's if you're creating content, especially on X, we'd love to get in touch with you because we're paying out creators every single day. $125,000 in creators rewards so far, and that's just during the private beta. So definitely look to get in touch with y'all.
Unbelievable. Morgan, hopefully we can do this again very soon. Check back in and see how things are progressing. Thank you again, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure, and look forward to all the success Tunnl's about to have.
For sure, for sure. Take care. Appreciate the
Awesome.
time.
Be
Thanks.
good. Cheers.